Hello and welcome to the third tune in the contest teaching series. This is going to be a rag. So in a fiddle contest, you're usually required to play a hoedown, which is fast 4/4, a waltz, which is 3/4 of course, and then something that isn't either of those. Could be a rag, a polka, a hornpipe, maybe even a jig, but I chose rag for you, and I've composed something so that it includes everything I wanted to teach. So rags are interesting because they come from ragtime, that is hence the name, and this was a kind of a craze in the 1890s, starting with piano players composing these rags, and eventually fiddlers started playing them too. The reason they are called rags is because of the syncopation, the syncopated rhythms that they described as ragged rhythms. So syncopation is, in this piece, kind of rhythms that don't just fall squarely on the beat. So mostly it's 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2 rhythms. So you'll hear that. I'm going to play the beginning of the piece. You can hear a little 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2 pulse in there, and we can talk about that more later. So we start on the D string. And this is a pentatonic scale, so it's a 5-note scale. This portion of the pentatonic scale has the same fingerings, D string to A string. So we're using 0, 1, 3, 0, 1, 3. We go up and down, D to high D. We'll try that. Ready, go. And for this tune I wanted to say, if it has a lot of notes in it, so if you feel like it will help you, then go ahead and get the music, the sheet music that's available, and follow along to help you grasp what we're doing. And with the emphasis, so the D, the A, and then the last B are emphasized. The next measure starts with 3-note groups again, G, A, and B, which happens twice. And then we add an A and a G at the end. Now to go with this emphasis, we add slurs too. A 3-note slur, which you can leave out at first, but eventually you can do the slur. So the first 2 measures, all 8th notes, sounds like this. Now the next measure starts with a slide on the F sharp. It's pretty fast. Later we'll have a slower one. Try the slide and the D. Ready, go. Now we're going to add notes. You'll notice every other note is D. So we have an F sharp slide, a D, an E, a D, and a C, and back to D. Now this measure goes twice, so it sounds like this. I'll play it and then count it so you can play it. 1, 2, ready, go. Now this will be hard to memorize all these notes at once. You might want to stop and work on each phrase, but when you put what we know together, it sounds like this. Now kind of the answer phrase to that goes down to a low A on the G string. Now we have another slide. This time it's slower, so it sounds like 2 notes. An F to an F sharp. You can try that. Ready, go. We want to do that fast enough so it sounds like 2 notes. When you go too slow, it sounds like 1 continuous slide. So you want to pause on the F and then quickly move to the F sharp and the next 8th note. But first, before that in the measure, we have A, C, and D. We'll try that. Ready, go. And it's important to slur and slide at the same time. 3-note up bow slur again. It's actually kind of a bow pattern that I use a lot for syncopation because it's a really interesting sound to slur in the middle 3/8 notes of the, there's 3 notes separate, 3 notes slurred, 2 notes separate. That creates that 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2 rhythm. Now we have 2 similar measures. The first one, now the same thing, only the slide is fast this time. That's the only difference. Well, and the last, actually the last 2 notes. So it starts the same and it's slightly different. That new one was E, D, A. Try that. Ready, from low A. So those 2 low measures together, measures 5 and 6, are and you'll hear how that slide, the second F sharp slide, is creating syncopation. Now the next measure is a low G. G, A, B, D. So we skip the C, and then we go up the scale from D to B. And we'll end with a B slide. So let's try that from G. Ready, go. And whenever you slide, you want to play it firmly, so I marked a nice staccato with a sustain, so attacking but not stopping abruptly. And the last notes of the section are A, G, E, D. So that last measure starts with B. B, A, G, A. Sorry, yes, B, A, G, E, D. B, A, G, E, D. So let's work on the second half to review. It starts on low A. I'll play the second half and then we can do it together. And as I said, if you're having trouble remembering all that so quickly, you can stop and review or just get the music and look at that while I teach it. So from where I played on the low A, ready, go. All of that would repeat, and the section sounds like this. Ready, go. let's talk about bowing style for just a second. We want to use short enough bows that it sounds really rhythmic, which is what I end up telling my students quite often when they're learning fiddle styles, is to play shorter bows, shorter bows. We work on that for a long time until they get short enough. If they're too short, it doesn't sound good because the tone will suffer a little bit and it'll get a little bit scratchy. That's how you know you're too short. Otherwise, you want to be pretty short and heavy enough to have a nice beginning to a lot of the notes that's very firm sounding, and that helps it sound rhythmic and it helps it have energy. So that is the first section. The second section, luckily, it has a little bit less to memorize because there's more repeating. We go into some bow rocking or string crossing, and this gets into a pattern that is often played, and it has a special name, which is called hokum. I think of it as being hocus pocus, because I don't know exactly what hokum means, or if it ever even had a real meaning, but we tend to call this pattern we're learning. And similar patterns, syncopated string crossings, we call them hokum bowing. And that's the most famous example would be Orange Blossom Special, which sounds like a train. But here we're going high G on the D string, low G, open G. And again, it gives you a 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2 rhythm, only we're holding out the last 1, 2 instead of playing 2 notes. So we'll do that together. Ready, go. Then we're going to retake, and the next measure is like this. The rest creates a syncopated feeling here, because it doesn't sound like a rag unless we have a lot of syncopation. So that's G, that's G, E, G, A, rest, G, E, D. Try that, ready, go. So both of those measures together would be 1, 2, ready, go. Now to answer that, we have an E. So E, A, B, A, B, C, D, A, ready, go. You can slide the B. I wrote a little slide in there. And if you haven't seen it marked this way, it's a little curved line going up to the note. No, we want to stay right at a C natural. We don't want to slide higher than C natural, so we'll have to start extra low below the C and slide up to C. So you just have to make sure that you start your finger really low and end on a C. The next measure starts with a slide. Oops. The next measure starts with a slide. Which sounds funny out of context, so I'll play the measure before. There we're sliding F to F sharp, this time changing bow between. So let me play the first 4 bars because that will make even more sense, and then we'll work on a small bit. Let's review that last measure. It's F sharp, D, A, C, D, E, F, F sharp. Let's try that together. Ready, F sharp. You can hear how most of the notes should be nice and strong. Probably middle of the bow, nice and heavy so that it sounds a little sticky. This could be a tricky measure, so you might want to practice it alone, but we'll try it together once. Ready, go. Then we go back to the way we started this second section, which is always called the B section, where the first is the A, of course. In fact, it's an exact repeat, so those 4 bars repeat exactly the same. Let's try all 8 bars, which would be the same 4 bars twice, of the B part. Starting there. Ready, go. Then to end the tune, we go back to this rhythmic pattern 2 times the way we've already done it. While the chord changes around underneath. And then finally 1 time with an extra note. And we have 1 more measure to learn after that. Let's do it with the extra note first. Ready, go. 1 more time. Ready, go. Now that is what I think of as the true hokum pattern, with all 8 notes in the measure. The one before sounds almost the same, but most of the time I hear it as a full 8-note pattern. Now the last thing we have to learn is just, I have to adjust something to make sure I teach you the right notes, is the ending. So that is one of the more complicated measures. I'll tell you the notes. It is G, F, D, C, B flat, B natural, D, and E. Put it all together. Ready, go. So we get more practice sliding the second finger for violins and violas. If you're playing cello, of course, it would be different finger. The secret there is to not move your whole hand. Slide with your finger moving only, and as you, in the moment of sliding, you have to be a little lighter, otherwise it'll be hard to do it fast enough because you'll be pushing down too hard on the string. So in order to slide well, you have to lighten up a little bit. Let's do that last measure 1 more time with a little faster. So ready, go. From there, we repeat. So it goes back to the beginning. We play all the material again, and then instead of doing that first ending that we just learned, we just end with a quick G at the end, lift off the bow probably, to keep it nice and short sounding. So that is the basic material. You'll find in the play-along video there's also part 2 and 3. Part 2 is pizzicato, although you could play it with the bow and it would sound good. This is kind of what the left hand of the piano would do in the rag, keeping a straight rhythm that's not syncopated, while the right hand melody does play syncopation, so they end up hitting at different times. So very square, that's your little accompaniment, or with the bow. But either way you do it, you want to keep beats 2 and 4 a little bit short. So I marked them staccato because they should be boom, chuck, boom, chuck. The chucks should be kept short so you can actually lighten your finger and shorten those notes to give it a nice bouncy feel. Instead of a little bit longer, it doesn't quite have the same rhythm. So part 2 will be probably for advanced students because it has the double stops, or you could separate out one of the 2 notes and just play single notes if you want to try it and you don't know how to do the double stops yet. The last part is part 3, the bass line. That's what we would call a walking bass line. And oftentimes upper strings don't get to play bass lines because that's for cellos and basses most of the time. But when there's no other instruments but violins, we might do it to accompany our friends. So that mostly every note is the same. Boom, 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 boom. And there's a little, maybe slight more energy at the very end, which is called the turnaround, when the chords turn around, or maybe it turns you around to go back to the beginning of the tune. I'm not sure why it's called a turnaround, but at the turnaround, you might bring up the volume just a little bit to make it more interesting. And I've written a couple places to accent mostly the beginnings of measures in the second half. So that will make it more interesting, bringing out some of those notes. It's kind of like a separate little melody if you do the accents. So you can practice it with the play-along video, which is separate from this, and that has the sheet music playing so you can keep track of where you are. And thanks for tuning in and learning this. Good luck with your fiddling.